Hello and welcome to the oddschecker betting show sponsored by 888 Sport. This is a weekend racing preview looking ahead to the weekend's racing at Ascot and at Haydock, including the Ascot Chase. I'm your host, George Elek, and Andy Holding is on holiday, very well deserved. So today I am joined by Rory Delargy and Andrew Thornton and 888 Sport ambassador Barry Geraghty. Stay tuned to hear Barry Geraghty's thoughts on the Arkle after Edwardstone's win last weekend at Warwick.
Better horse than he was a hurler. I thought he's got very professional. He has a lot of experience too. So I think the Arkle is wide open.
We have an in-depth Ascot Chase preview with Rory suggesting that a 9-2 shot should be favourite.
He's very, very effective when the ground is testing. And again, he doesn't quite stay 3 miles. So 2 mile 5 in this ground should be absolutely ideal.
We discuss whether or not a former star could get back to former glories.
He's a classy horse. He probably needs things to go right for him. He certainly deserves a crack at this, and he's in there with a good chance off the back of a perfect preparation.
And finally, a 13-year-old in the Grand National trial at Haydock for Andrew Thornton.
I'm in agreement with Rory. God, his last 2 wins at Haydock have been blown him apart.
Always good to catch up with 888 Sport ambassador Barry Geraghty and look back at the weekend's racing we just had before casting our glances at what's coming up this weekend coming. Let's start at Newbury. A few impressive performances there, but I think we have to kick off with Brave Man's Game in the opener. What did he make of that win over Pat's Fancy?
Yeah, it was good. It was a good performance in the handicap. He jumped reasonably well. I thought he was very clever at the cross fence, which is a tricky fence. The fourth last, he put in an extra stride, but I think Harry was maybe looking for a little bit more than he should have been. But he was very good over the last 3, gave them a lot of air, which for me was a reflection of what he had in the tank. Harry then afterwards was quick to point out that he'd rather drop him in and take a lead, which I think is interesting. And I think if a High Seigneur and Gallop and the Champ were to line up in the RSA, I think a High Seigneur could be a help for Brave Man's Game to ensure an end-to-end gallop, because I think he is a horse who stays really well. I wonder if he just lacked the pace for the Ballymore last year. So I think a really strongly run 3 mile is going to suit him. So I think a High Seigneur could even be, he might be hard to beat, but the pace element I think it would be beneficial to Brave Man's Game.
Yeah, and looking over as well at happenings at Warwick, we saw Edwardstone justify favouritism at 10-11 there, a bit of a return to form. You know, on the show last week, I think everyone was agreed in maybe third time lucky being the one to side with ahead of this race. And now Edwardstone into favourite for the Arkle. Do you think that's fair?
Yeah, it was a very good performance, and he was particularly quick and slick over the last 2. He's a horse who has improved all the way through all the season. He's a better horse than he was a hurler. I thought he's got very professional. He has a lot of experience too. So I think the Arkle is wide open. It probably lacks a superstar, but I think he is the best of them. He's a worthy favourite. You'd have to just wonder about third time lucky. It was 14 days after his win in Doncaster, and he reportedly picked up an overreach on the occasion. So whether we saw third time lucky at his best, I'm not fully certain. But I think Warwick would be more favourable to him than Cheltenham. I think the Hill and Cheltenham would play more to Edwardstone's strengths than third time lucky anyway. So I thought it was a good performance by the winner. He's probably the right favourite for the Arkle, but it's a very, very open race.
Rory, looking at the Arkle odds now, Edwardstone's 2-1 ahead of Blue Lord at 3-1, Riviere de Tel 4-1, Horton Color 8-1, Saint Sam 10-1. So a whole stack of Irish horses sitting in behind him in the market. Do you think what Edwardstone has done so far does put him ahead of those the Irish challengers?
Yeah, he sets the standard. The Irish Arkle was a slightly messy race, but it's better race than it looked at the time. But obviously with Blue Lord not quite finishing the race as it looked like he might, and just sort of scrambling home from Riviere de Tel, I think that put a few people off. But Edwardstone's form has been tremendously solid. It's not just a case of that run at Warwick being an absolutely top class one for a novice, but he'd already won a Grade 1 at Sandown, and he backed that up winning the Wayward Lad. So he's got 3 performances that rate really well in terms of collateral form and in terms of time as well. So he definitely deserves to be favourite for that race. I think closer to the off, there might be opposition to him because he's run 3 times at Cheltenham and he's been unplaced on all 3 of those runs. That's slightly misleading. I thought he ran really well on the county hurdle last year, where he was finishing off pretty strongly and beating less than 3 lengths into 5th. But people will look at that and they'll probably, if you've got a horse who's run at Cheltenham 3 times, been on place 3 times, and yet has got a very, very good record elsewhere, people will just say that he's not suited by the track. And Alan King, I think, is at 86 consecutive losers at the festival as well. So he's going to be on a lot of people's list as the lay of the day on the opening day of the festival. So you might end up getting better odds then than you will now. But there's no doubt that what he's achieved over fences puts him right in the front rank.
We're pretty lucky here to have 2 jockeys who've ridden over 1,000 winners. Andrew, not often you're on a podcast with someone who's ridden more winners than you, so you're doing well to keep your cool here. But if you putting the question to both of you, Andrew and Barry, if you had to choose now, looking at the article to sit on one horse, would you be choosing Edwardstone?
I'd be choosing Edwardstone because I think he was a good hurdler. He's just a far better chaser. The how quick he is over the fences. To see him go around there taking a neck here and there out of good jumpers sets him apart. And bearing in mind, they had a go last year with him. He just got unlucky, didn't he? Got brought down and things just didn't pan out for him. It might have panned out in his favour because it's given him another season against hardened handicappers over hurdles when he's put up some solid performances. He's that year stronger now. And I think it'll help him no end. And for me, he's just, if you could say he's a stone better over fences than he is over hurdles, that could just set him apart. And it hasn't spoilt him by having another season over hurdles, which he can do with some horses, but not him. That's how I'd see it, Barry.
Yeah, no, I think, as I said, he's a worthy favourite. The horse that really interests me is St. Sam. I thought he ran a cracker at Leopardstown. He did too much to them through the most part of the race, really, but still managed to stay on really well. His jumping was hit and miss at times, but I think he'd be better for the experience. But he has raced with a hood in the past over hurdles, and I just wonder, will that hood go back on for the festival? I think if it did, that would help him settle. I think that would help his jumping. And he, to me, was the horse to maybe take out of the Irish Arkle, so he could be a little bit of value.
Interesting. And before we do look ahead to the Irish racing on Sunday with you, Barry, just quickly, 4 weeks today, it will be the Thursday of the festival. We've spoken a lot about the stayers in the past, but a quick look at the Ryanair, which I feel is kind of a race that's under previewed a bit if that's even possible at the Cheltenham Festival these days. But Allaho is the even money favourite ahead of Energumene, who, of course, we don't expect to take up his entry here. Aplutard, similar story at 10-1, Conflated 10-1, St Calvados 10-1, Sham Blue 12-1. That Allaho kind of even money, Rory there saying that Edwardstone will be a horse that plenty are willing to take on. I think that Allaho at even money will be one of the biggest bankers or perceived bankers of the festival after that performance last year. Can you see anything coming close to getting near him?
On his performance last year, I don't think so. We all had question marks what was going to happen to him after the tough race he had in the John Durkan first time, but he put that to bed with his performance in Thurles last time. He was brilliant last year. He's going to be very hard to beat. If you're looking for value in the opposition, I think Fakir Delargy, is probably a main contender. And a horse who I'm interested in is Fanion d'Esterval. Just interested to see how he goes on Saturday, because he could be value in the Eacher market. Now, he's 40 lengths behind Fakir Delargy in this race last year, but as a 6-year-old. So I think there is improvement there. Obviously, Venetia's horses are on fire as well. So he could be a mover on Saturday, because I think he could go well.
Let's look at Sunday over in Navan, and we've got a couple of interesting races. We've got the Boyne Hurdle and the 10-up Novice Chase as well, Barry. Any there to catch you? Obviously, we're recording this on Thursday, so not confirmed in terms of who runs, but we have a decent idea.
Yeah, well, the Boyne Hurdle has entered up a very strong race on penalties. It probably swings on penalties, really. But you've Saldier, who disappointed his last couple of runs. He has the ability. The Rasso has been in good form. The Real Deal tried chasing early on in the season. He had great form last season. Darver Star is back from fences to hurdles, placed in a champion hurdle in the past. And Ronald Pump as well. He disappointed at both Ascot and Leopardstown last time, where he had ran a cracker. He was only 8 lengths behind Honeysuckle in the Hatton's Grace. I think if he reproduced that form, he's the one to beat. So you have a lot of horses who've dirtied their bibs in recent times, but have good form. But of the ones getting the weight, I thought Ronald Pump was interesting, and Darver Star I thought was a little bit unlucky in Linkfield, just to get racing a bit early, and I think he was outstayed in the death by Brewing Up the Storm. So I think Darver Star is one with a squeak, but Ronald Pump if he puts his best foot forward, I think he's the one to have to beat.
One on pump then there in the Boyne Hurdle. Rory, any views on these races over at Navan on Sunday?
No, I must say I've not looked at the Boyne or the 10 up as yet, so I'll not throw a guess in at this stage.
Barry, we'll talk about the 10 up then as well before we let you go. Any views here?
Yeah, I think Jiggleston hold the key to this one. They have Farouk Delaine and they have Runwild Fred. Runwild Fred, who won the Tri-Town, he was second in the Irish National. He was second to Fury Road in Leopardstown in a snowly run race. I think the conditions on Sunday would be very soft, if even heavy, are going to suit him. He has plenty of experience. He's getting weight as well, which is a big plus for him. I think he's the one to beat if he turns up. If he didn't, Farouk Delaine would be next best. Likewise, good form in soft ground, second to Master McShee and second to Statler and Nace last time. And then you have Beacon Edge, who would have good form, fell last time. He had won the Drinmore prior to that, but I don't think he's in love with fences, and I can't imagine the fall he had in Leopardstown is going to help his confidence for the weekend. So I'd be very much against him, but I'd be with the other two Jiggleston runners.
Excellent stuff. Great to hear from you as ever. 888 Sport Ambassador Barry Geraghty sharing his thoughts on last weekend's racing and a decent little card at Navan on Sunday as well. Speak next week.
Cheers, George. Thank you.
On to Ascot now on Saturday. As I said, we're recording this just after midday on Thursday, so final decks are in, but it does mean that there aren't prices in all of the races. So we're going to do the middle four, the 150, the 225, the 3 o'clock, and the 3:38, starting with the Bateau London Reynoldstown Novice Chase. And we've got Does He Know is the 5-2 favourite ahead of Annual Invictus at 7-2. Coach Rambler 7-2, Doyen Breed 11-2, Fernhill 10-1, and Geoffroy 14-1. These are, of course, best prices you can find on the oddschecker app. So do download that now so you can see the best prices as well, and you can see all place terms, bookie offers, free bets, and the rest of it too. But come to you first here, Rory, for the second race at Ascot.
I think the market's a bit upside down here at first glance. I don't think Does He Know should be favourite for this race. He ran once on heavy grounds last year, and Kim Billy said it was a mistake to run him. He was running him in a Pretemps qualifier at Exeter almost this week last year, and he ran his only bad race as a result. So whether he turns up on very bad ground is a question. And of course, I think the advance going is soft rather than heavy at Ascot, but we're obviously expecting storms tomorrow, so things could get a bit tougher for them. So I'd be against Does He Know on the ground. I think he really does want good or quicker ground. His 3 runs over fences have come on good or good to firm ground. So this would not necessarily be ideal for him. Annual Invictus as second favourite is a slightly odd one as well. He's a horse I like. He's in my 10 to follow. And I would very much like him to win a Grade 2 to keep that alive. But he looked an absolute pig at Plumpton last time out. He tailed himself off. He really made no effort through the middle part of the race. And then when they've turned for home and he realizes that that he can go back to the horse box, he decided to run on. So he ended up only being beaten 2 1/4 lengths there, but he was virtually tailed off on the home turn. And whether you would trust him, again, he had a pretty hard race at the entry when he was favourite for a novices handicap chase in his previous start and really tough conditions and heavy ground there, and he was pulled up. And whether that soured him a little bit, I don't know. It may well be that Chris Gordon, who's a very good trainer, will have nursed him back. But the fact that he sticks cheek pieces on suggests that he thinks the horse needs all the help he can get. Interestingly, on his chase day, his second start over fences this season, he actually broke a course record at Cheltenham. So although he had plenty of form on soft and heavy ground over hurdles, his best chase form has come on quick ground. Again, it's possibly got slightly jarred up that day because he hasn't looked quite the same horse since winning at Plumpton. And whether you would trust him to put his best foot forward here is open to debate. Korak Rambler ran very well in the classic chase at Warwick last time out and has plenty of potential. Interestingly, he wears a tongue tie. It looked like he was going to finish off that race pretty well at Warwick, and he's always looked a thorough stayer, but he couldn't make any more progress over the last 2 or 3 fences there. So maybe his breathing was bothering him a little bit. And Doyen Breed ran pretty well, ran very well, if you like, behind 3 under 3-5. Although I thought that race lacked depth, that Grade 2 at Warwick last time out. So I thought the two I'd like to be with are the bottom two, Fernhill and Geoffroy. Fernhill was due to run against Brave Man's Game at Newbury last week, but was taken out. He prefers softer, heavy ground. He's going to get that. And he's a front runner who jumps well. So that's always a useful thing to have in the Reynolds Town. If you can go forward and attack your fences, you put yourself in a good position. And that's similar to what Jay Fouad might do. So the pair of them might take each other on to a degree, but they're relative outsiders here. They have more to come, and I think they'll be better suited by the race conditions than some in here. Jay Fouad was actually last of 5 finishers behind Corach Rambler at Cheltenham in December. I think people will look at that form line and immediately rule him out as not being good enough. But he was a really progressive hurdler last season. He won on this card last year on soft ground over hurdles and showed improved form subsequently. He badly needed the experience on his Chase debut at Hexham. It was a little bit disappointing, but he didn't run that bad at Cheltenham. But that was on good ground. His best form is on a pretty deep surface, so he just got outpaced given the way that race was run. And I thought he wasn't knocked about by Max Kendrick and shaped as if he would do a fair bit better. He was giving quite a lot of weight away. He was giving 9 pounds away to Corach Rambler. So the fact that he was beaten 12 lengths in the end isn't as bad as it looks. He's not, he's reasonably closely matched with Corach Rambler in that form. And I can see him improving markedly for that. He will also improve for the switch to very deep ground. So I think he's value at 14-1. But Fernhill, again, looks pretty solid as well. And with the front 2 in the market looking underpriced, I would happily take 2 against them.
10-1 Fernhill, best price, and Geoffroy 14-1. The 2 outsiders of the pack, the 2 that Rory wants to side with. Andrew, how do you see this?
I'm looking at it thinking, I'm not sure whether I'd want to be with the northern horses the way the weather conditions are, i.e. Sandy Thompson and Lucinda Russell. They'll have to travel them down, rattling around in the stables when it's really windy. Look, it doesn't suit horses in that respect. So I'd definitely be wary on that footing. You're taking more chances as well with that kind of thing. Fernhill, I agree with Rory, because I think the Grumpy Charlie form on soft ground at Newbury reads well. Grumpy Charlie taking on Brave Man's Game, the ground was too quick for him the other day, and I still thought he ran well. But with ground conditions being on the slow side, Ben Casey's horses are in good nick. Laura Morgan's horses are in a lot better form now than they were earlier in the season. I'd agree. And does he know? I think he's better off going left-handed. He definitely has a tendency to drift that way a little bit. And when you look through his form, most of his best form is going left-handed. And as I say, Anil Invictus was very unconvincing last time out. I'm in the Fernhill camp, definitely, with the form in the book, and he's lightly raced as when you look through his form, he's definitely improving, and that I think that was a very good run at Newbury last time out.
Fernhill, then the one for Andrew as well, 10-1, as I say, as short as 6-1 in places. By the way, that both Andrew and Rory are talking up his chances, could well be closer to the SP than the 10s you can get now. Move on then to the 225, the Swinley Chase, and we've got Fiddler on the Roof is a 3-1 favourite ahead of Ask Me Early at 7-2. Caribbean Boy 15-2, Larry and Cobolobo 12-1, 4-Skew 14-1. 14-1 Hold That Taut, 20-1 Regal Encore 22, Truckers Lodge and Sojourn 33-1. Andrew,
if Fiddler on the Roof wins this under this weight, he's be lined up the Gold Cup, end of story. It's a heck of a lot of weight to give away on slow ground. That'd be my concern for him. Ask Me Early, he's on a bit of a retrieval mission. Because he did have he's had a tumble schooling, and that he's run over hurdles. He was meant to go for it was the well publicised fall that Sean Bowen had before the Welsh Grand National. It's taken a bit of time to get him back. He'll have his ground conditions, and he's got a lovely weight here. He'll be ridden very positively. Hopefully he's had a chance to get over those mental scars. Caribbean Boy obviously won at Kempton last time out, beat Smarty Wild, who's run since, and I just wonder whether he's just better on an easy track. I'm looking a little bit further down at horses at bigger prices here. I thought Truckers Lodge the way the forecast is with the real soft ground, it could be hard work. And he's had a good break since he last ran. Paul Nicholls' horses are obviously with Brave Man's game winning. We think it's that they're all healthy and well. It's another week on, and it hasn't had that many runners. I'm willing to take a chance at the price with him. Lorcan Williams on board, who underrated rider, very good horseman, rides the horse regularly. For me, if you stuck Harry Cobden next to this horse's name, he'd be single figures in the betting. So from the price point of view, I think the Truckers Lodge has definitely got opportunities if we get the anticipated rain, and with it being this could end up to be hard work, and it would suit him down to the ground.
22-1 best price for Truckers Lodge, another one where it might pay to be quick, with him being as short as 12-1 elsewhere. Rory?
I could very, very easily see Fiddler on the Roof winning this. As Andrew says, it's a tough task in these conditions to give away weight, but class horses can do it. His Novice Chase season went pretty well. He was a little bit disappointing in the middle of it, but he finished off well, and he got right back to his best when winning the Colin Parker Memorial at Carlisle in his return. Stepped up on that with an excellent second in the Ladbrokes Trophy off a mark of 150. He's gone up £5 for that, but the front two were a long way clear, and I think he deserves that. Connections hope that he's well treated for the Grand National, which he may well be, but he will, as Andrew says, he will potentially go for the Gold Cup on the back of a big run here. So if he wins or goes close, then he'll have the Gold Cup on his agenda, which would be interesting. Of course, he was second in the Brown Advisory last year. And although he threatened to disappoint a little bit last season, the Yard are back in top form now after quite a long sort of lean spell, and I very much respect him. Brendon Pyle, by the way, is riding tremendously well this season. He's really, he had a Cheltenham Festival winner as a young man, and it looked like he was going places, and then he had a few years essentially in the wilderness. But he's teamed up with Colin Tizard. It looked like it was very unlikely that he was going to. It was Colin who gave him his festival winner. There were other people in front of him there in the queue, but he's managed to work his way in essentially a stable jockey, and his riding this season has been tremendous. It's really good to see. So I think he's got a favourite's chance. I think he's the right favourite here. I don't like Caribbean Boy particularly. He seems to me a horse who prefers. Andrew says maybe an easy track. I think he doesn't like too many horses around him, to be perfectly honest. He looked very promising when he won at Newbury last season, and then the wheels came off a little bit, and he got back on track winning at Kempton, but I thought it was a pretty soft race, and then a tough handicap up in the weights. I don't think he'd fancy it much, to be perfectly honest. The one I think could go well at a price here is Fortescue. 14 is a big price about him. He's really consistent. He was I know he's only 7th in the Ladbrokes Trophy, but that wasn't a terrible performance given the field got split up quite badly there. And he's run really well in his 2 runs since. He was in front of a subsequent winner when he was narrowly beaten by an unexposed rival at Kempton over Christmas. And then he was an excellent third behind Royal Pagaille in the Peter Marsh last time out. That was a really solid performance. He always puts it in. Hugh Nugent knows him pretty well and claims 5 off his back. So he gets in here with 10 stone 7. I know he's gone up in the weights a little bit since the start of the season, but really consistent chaser on soft ground, and is equally adept at going right-handed as left. So I think he's going to run a solid race, and if you're looking for an each-way punt in the race, he looks a lot safer than most.
Fortescue 14-1 best price, and positive word as well for Fiddler on the Roof, who's currently 3-1 best price, as short as 7-4 elsewhere. On then to the handicap hurdle, the next one, the 3 o'clock. And Good Risk at All is the 15-8 favourite ahead of Captain Matan at 4-1. Zaccany Rebel 11-2. Highway 102 is 9-1. Ballybeg 11-1. Piccadilly Lily 12-1. 14-1 bar those ones. Rory, will stick with you for this one.
Not much of a price, but it's very, very hard to get away from Good Risk at All, who was laid out for the Betfair hurdle last week. But Sam Thomas misread the conditions. And he'd planned to run him on the Sunday after the weights had closed to get his 3rd run in. Unfortunately, that meant he wasn't qualified for the race. Sometimes for the Grand National, for example, you can run on the Sunday and then the weights come out a couple of days later. So Snow Leopardess was able to run at Exeter last weekend, but unfortunately for Good Risk at All, his run didn't qualify him for the race. And he was a tad disappointing, you'd say, last time out on handicap debut, but he wouldn't have, that run was a means to an end. His bumper form is terrific, and he handled heavy ground. He was a winner in heavy ground at Cheltenham. He was he was a winner of that very good listed bumper. We saw the latest renewal off last weekend, and he ran into John Bon on his second start over hurdles. So his jumping wasn't great. His jumping actually was pretty dreadful on debut. It was better at Newbury. He's still learning in that department, but he's ended up getting a reasonably low handicap mark as a result. And based on the ability he showed in bumpers and his pedigree, he really should be a lot better than 127. So I'm expecting him to win this with a bit to spare. I know that it looks a pretty competitive handicap hurdle on paper, but I'd be disappointed if Good Risk at All is not a 140 plus horse. And off his current mark, as long as he jumps reasonably cleanly, he should have a bit to spare over these.
One for the favourite backers there, hopefully. Good Risk at All, 15 to 8 for Sam Thomas, the one for Rory here. Andrew, could you find anything to take on the fav with, or are you in agreement?
I think from an each-way perspective with Ballybeg for Kerry Lee. Darren McConville taking the 10 off. The blinkers first time had a big effect on this horse, but you toxed the last time out on heavy ground. And he's got obviously returns them this time around. It's a step up in class, but with that £10 off, 10.7 on his back, and just got to sneak the yards. Horses are not a vast amount of runners, but they're running okay. And as like Father Richard, heavier the better. It couldn't be heavy enough for their horses. So 10 stone 7, obviously Good Risk at All. He's got he probably said he's been knocking on the door, but I think at the prices with what I class as a jockey that not an awful lot of people know about, claiming 10, it's a big help on this sort of ground. He knows the horse well, and it could just turn into a thorough test of stamina. And I always think with these kind of races been later on in the card where the ground's been opened up and it's been cut up. It's got more opportunity. The more rain they get, the better for Ballybeg, and I think he's a good each-way proposition.
And Darren McConville's been impressive thus far. I know he obviously hasn't had many winners because he's still claiming 10, but he was very unlucky not to win the Skybet Chase on Storm Control. I saw him win on that horse at Newbury, and I thought he handled him like an experienced pro that day. Very cool head, rode the horse to give him confidence, and then he's almost travelled too well in the Skybet Chase. He's got clear after the second last, and the horse has just got lonely and has got mugged again by a horse that he'd gone away from. And you couldn't really blame the jockey for that. I think a really experienced jockey maybe would have kept company for a bit longer, but the game that long, I thought again he'd give him a lovely ride. So yeah, I'd give a thumbs up to Darren McConville.
And also, I'd just echo the fact that as well that you got mugged by somebody who's got that much experience around the northern tracks in Sean Quinlan. That to me, he just got unlucky. He'd say did the right. Should he have hung on to him longer? Well, possibly, but you'd rather see him getting there and getting mugged from a punter's point of view than holding on to him and not getting there at all.
Yep, fair point.
Ballybeg there, 11 to 1, best price as it is, the one to take on. The each way play maybe for Andrew. Positive words from both the guys about the jockey. On then to the big race of the day, the big race of the weekend, the Ascot Chase, and we've got Fakir Dudaries is the 3 to 1 favourite ahead of 9 to 2. Fanny and Destraval and St Calvados. Mr Fisher 5 to 1. Dashel Drasher 6 to 1. Lost in Translation 10 to 1. Waiting Patiently and 2 for Gold, both 25 to 1. 8 runners as it stands here, but as we've mentioned, with conditions the way they are, a fair chance that some could come out by Saturday. But all 8 that were entered were declared today. Rory, lots of, as we'd expect, quality horses here in a pretty open affair. Do you think the market at the moment has it right?
Roughly, although I would actually make St Calvados favourite for this. You can't really knock Fakir Dudaries. He's got a couple of seasons of very solid chase form. He's been running against the best, and he's a pretty consistent performer. But St Calvados is a horse who's promised to do a fair bit better than he has of late. He's not had an awful lot of luck. He travelled really well on the King George last year and didn't quite get the 3 miles, having taken a fair grip. And this year, jockey error. The chip probably would have beaten him anyway, but I think jockey error stopped him from looking a big winner there. They went pretty hard there, and then Gavin Sheehan, having done the right thing in the early stages and had him held up towards the back of the field, has rushed him up on the home turn, and he hasn't got home from there. He shaped almost like the best horse in the race that day. He was a non-runner in the Ryanair last season. I'd backed him Ante Post, and I couldn't believe he was taken out in good to soft ground. Given he'd won on a similar surface prior to that. But yes, as a novice, his best form was in heavy ground. He's shown since that he doesn't need it deep, but he's very, very effective when the ground is testing. And again, he doesn't quite stay 3 miles. So 2 mile 5 in this ground should be absolutely ideal for St Calvados. And it's his best opportunity of winning a big race. He wore a tongue tie last time. The tongue tie's on again. You maybe be a little bit with your heart in your mouth after the last fence, because it's probably the getting towards the limit of his stamina. But he's almost got 3 miles a couple of times around Kempton, and so this trip should be perfect for him. Again, we're hoping that Paul Nicholls is out of the woods after that barren spell, and I think St Calvados will take a lot of beating, and he's an interesting runner in the Ryanair if it comes up on the soft side there as well.
And 92 best price for this at the moment. And we spoke earlier about the Ryanair, but with Barry, would he be the one that you would take at the moment to take on Allaho?
I'd see him through this race first, because I think this is a very good opportunity for him. And again, given that Connections took him out of the race on the morning of it last year, when he was, I think, second or third favourite for it, would put you off backing him Ante Post. I don't know whether that was trainer's decision or owner's decision, but all the owner's horses left the trainer shortly after that, so you can fill in the gaps there. I'd be I think he'd definitely be on the short list for the Ryanair. But again, you're betting each way against Allaho there, really, as it stands at the moment.
Yeah, absolutely. St Calvados there, the one for Rory. Andrew, how do you see this?
I think this is as good a renewal as we've had in a fair while. There's depth. Bearing in mind last year's winner is 11-2, 6-1, Dashel Drasher. Who'll, the softer the conditions, the better it'll suit him. But I don't think it wasn't the strongest renewal last year, and this is far, far deeper. And I think the market's got it right. Lost in translation, obviously fifth in the King George. He's on, but still on a retrieval mission. 2 for Gold had a hard race for me down at Lingfield. That may leave its mark in a race of this nature where you've got horses that have been prepped for it. Again, Fakir with the wind and the travelling for this horse, that would worry me a little from a price perspective as well, with stormy conditions, having to travel across, and that would definitely worry me. I'm thinking that Mr. Fisher, what I saw last time out, was the Mr. Fisher we've been waiting to see for a fair while, and the form of his beating of Eldorado Allen, who boosted that form at Newbury, reads particularly well, and I thought that James Boyne got on exceptionally well with him. He had obviously he pulled up in the King George, but I won't say he was just half fit, but it was a good prep run for his run last time out. He travelled all right till down the back straight. He literally got tired turning in, and a bit of brotherly love. He pulled him up. Sean Bowen pulled him up, and because James. Was James, yeah. So it was a case of James would have ridden the horse at Kempton, but obviously for other circumstances with him getting knocked out. So I think it's Mr. Fisher. I think he's a classy horse. He probably needs things to go right for him, but he certainly deserves a crack at this. And he's in there with a good chance off the back of a perfect preparation.
Only thing I threw in there with Mr. Fisher, he does look like a nice setup there, but his record in Grade 1 company is 8-4 PUP, which is a little bit off-putting. He seems to save his best runs for Grade 2s. But,
I think he's just as healthy now as he's been, just the way he's had the perfect obviously you look back to that, but was he ready for it at the time? Probably not.
No, that's an interesting enough point, and he's the way he clearly the run last time out has worked out very well with Eldorado Allen going and winning the Denman next time out. But I do have my slight fears that he's a bit vulnerable against the very best around. But we shall see.
And can Evan Williams bring back Words Impatiently?
Well, I was going to say, yeah, Christian Williams.
A horse who has the potential, or had the potential. You could basically put a line through his first run for the yard, couldn't you? Because he literally, I think somebody had put a blindfold over him jumping the first fence. It's as if he didn't see it. He just didn't operate. So he'll have had every little bit of help that he could do. He loved this heavy ground. It'd be interesting to see how he goes. There's loads of pace on in the race. The race will be run to suit him. And it'll be very interesting to see if you'll know your fate as soon as this horse has jumped three or four fences. You'll have an idea, and he could be the type of horse that you may back in running after you've seen him jump a few fences.
Yeah, 25-1, Waiting Patiently, the winner of this race back in 2018, and as Andrew says there, probably in terms of what he's done, he's probably got almost the pick of the form of the lot, but just a couple of poor runs recently, pulled up the last two times. But second to Frodon in the King George back in 2020 as well. So it's not ancient history that we saw him operating at a very high level. Yeah,
and of course he beat Frodon by 15 lengths and more when he won this race. Beat Q Card by about 3 lengths, 2 3/4 lengths, with Frodon 15 lengths behind them in third that day. So we know what he could do. It's just a question of whether we can turn the clock back.
Over to Haydock now, where we're going to cover 2 races, the Rendlesham Hurdle and the Grand National Trial. Thomas Darby is the 15-8 favourite in the 205. Molly's Ollie's Wishes 5-2, Third Wind 9-2, Top Val Ben 7-1, Emma Tom 11-1, and Holstone 14-1. Andrew,
I like Molly's Ollie's Wishes here. Especially in getting the receipt of plenty of weight off Thomas Darby as well. Been the mare, she's had a good break. She handles plenty of cut underfoot, and as I say, she's a real strong traveller. I think it'll help because in a race like this, you're going to have the likes of Topville Ben wanting to make sure this is a real good test, and she has a good turn of foot. And round a sharp track like Haydock, 3 miles, I think that should be just play to her strengths. And the longer you hang on to her, the better she is. And I think Harry Skelton knows now how to play it. You just leave it late, and don't expect to see her upsides at the last either, because it's a long run in at Haydock. For me, Harry Skelton would be very happy for the others to get to work, him to be 2 lengths down jumping the last with such a long run in, pull out wide, go and do your challenging. I think the race will be run to suit her. So I'd be playing her against the favourite.
Molly's Ollie's Wishes there, the one for Andrew at 5-2. Rory?
Yeah, she should be favourite for this. She's easily the most reliable in this field. She wasn't at her best in the Ascot Hurdle, the Coral Ascot Hurdle in November. Aside from that, she's been very good. She was impressive in listed company over a trip too short for her. Weatherby on her return. She's ridden very aggressively there to bring her stamina into play. And then she showed that she stays a stiff 3 miles with a cosy win at Ascot last time out. She won that with a fair bit to spare, to be honest. It was set up for her. The leader went off far too hard, and my sister Sarah didn't ever really look to be travelling particularly well. But the clock shows it was a good performance, and there was more in the tank as well. She will love the conditions. The track will suit her as well. And there are lots of question marks against the others. Holstone's coming off a very long absence, and he's an 11-year-old now. Topville Ben is using this as a prep for the National. Whether he uses his normal tactics is a bit of a question as well. But he did make all the running at Lingfield last time out, so he probably will. Emma Tom is one of 2 previous winners of this race. He won it in 2020, but he's never fulfilled his potential. He's a horse who always looked like he might make up into a really top class chaser, but his jumping's been. Henrietta Knight described him as the worst jumper she's ever seen. when Warren Griffiths sent him to be schooled.
She's seen a lot of jumpers as well, Rory,
She certainly has. So so she did a lot of work with him, but he's never really had the confidence in it, and he doesn't take a cut at either his hurdles or his fences. And yeah, he's kind of in no man's land, Emma Tom. Thomas Darby is the classiest horse in the race, but he doesn't always want to put it in, and he didn't want to put it in at Ascot last time out. His win at Newbury was a strange one because it looks really good form now, and he did that. He was hard on the bridle with 2 to jump, but he looked beaten turning out of the back straight. And oddly enough, he stumbled on landing at maybe the 4th last hurdle. A couple of them got away from him, but they've maybe gone for home too soon, and he's got a bit of confidence from chasing them down. But he isn't a horse who shows his form 2 runs in a row, so you can't trust him at a short price to get the job done. More than capable of winning this race, but he's a hard horse to back at a short price. And Third Winds, he won this race last year. He's going to run a decent race again, and he's probably the danger. But giving £7 to Molly Ollie's Wishes, probably too much for him.
Probably too much. Molly Ollie's Wishes, the combined both guys going after him at 5-2, the one to side with in that one. And then on to the Grand National Trial, the final race we'll be previewing on the show. And Secret Reprieve is the 11-4 favourite ahead of Sam Brown at 11-2. On Guard is 8-1. Black Lion 8-1. Bristol de Mai 8-1 as well. The Galloping Bear 10-1. Time to Get Up 12-1. Lord de Mesnil and Mint Condition both 14s. Sidi Ismail is 22-1 and Kaluki 25-1. Rory.
A really tough one that I struggle to find a standout in, to be perfectly honest. I'd love to see Bristol de Mai do it, but I'm concerned about the fact that this comes pretty quick after a hard run in the Fleur de Lis chase at Lingfield. That probably counts against him. And Sam Brown, similarly a horse I like. He's never taken his racing particularly well, and this is pretty quick after the Peter Marsh. I say pretty quick. It's 4 weeks, but for horses who've shown themselves to be a little bit fragile, you wonder whether they'll be at their best 4 weeks on from pretty tough races. I can see old Black Lion running well again. He ran a huge race in the National last year. If you look back at that, most of those who fought out the finish were reasonably handy, and you've got to be handy at entry these days. Black Lion was last in the early stages, and yet he's come through the field to throw down a challenge with 2 to jump before he's got tired from those exertions. And he's looked, I wouldn't say as good as ever this season, but he's been rejuvenated by Dan Skelton. He's got 2 good wins, both at this track on soft and heavy ground, and he's going to run another decent race. Unfortunately, I think he's going to miss the cut for the National, which is a shame. I know he's a 13-year-old now, but you know he loves the entry, and it's just a shame that he's probably going to miss out there. I think he's about 60th on the list, so he might just creep in, and he'd be an interesting contender in the National if it turns out soft or heavy. But this race will suit him. There are 1 or 2 younger horses who run exposed in here who might just have his legs, but I can see him running a decent race and hitting the frame again. He might struggle to bring up that half trick, but he'll go down trying, that's for sure.
Pat Line 8-1 there for Rory. Andrew?
I'm in agreement with Rory. God, his last 2 wins at Haydock have been blown him apart, and he's still well handicapped on his old form, especially with Bristol de Mai staying in here. Keeps the weights down. That's massive. And I'd echo exactly what he said about Sam Brown and Bristol de Mai. Hard horses to train, 2 runs in 4 weeks. That's what it boils down to. And that isn't easy. Secret Reprieve, he's sad that he's not going to get into another National after missing out before. I think, he is a class horse. He's a Welsh National winner. But the price it's skinny, and obviously this is a real tough test. But yeah, Black Lion, I think Time to Get Up, who was is a young horse on the up, Midlands Grand National winner. But I just feel that the way the conditions of it at Haydock, they're right up Black Lion Street, and as far as being a 13-year-old. That doesn't worry me, because we know he had a light campaign. He was bought as a Grand National contender by Darren Yates to run in it. He got a touch of a leg. He had to have time off. He's given the time. It's been a little while to come back, but he, for a National Hunt horse, I think he's only had about 35 runs in his career. That isn't a lot of racing. And as I well know and you well know, Rory, age is only but a number. He's not smiling.
Well, the all-important number here is 8-1, which is Blackline. Both Andrew and Rory going after Blackline there at 8-1. The tip for the 240, the Grand National Trial at Haydock on Saturday. That brings our weekend preview at Ascot and Haydock to a close. Thank you very much to Andrew Thornton and to Rory Delargy, and of course 888 Sport for sponsoring the podcast, and their ambassador Barry Geraghty for joining us as well. Do download the oddschecker app for all the best prices, bookie offers, free bets, place terms, and some of the very best tipsters in the game, including Andy Holding, who's currently sunning himself on a sunbed somewhere. Very jealous. He deserves it though, I think, just about. But we will be speaking to him again in a couple of weeks. So do subscribe to our YouTube channel, or you can get the podcast on any podcast provider as well. Hopefully we've given some value there somewhere. I'm sure there will be a couple of winners, hopefully, in amongst it. But please do ensure that whilst you're enjoying the racing, that you're gambling responsibly.